Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara. I'm here to welcome you into the world of orgasmic living by hosting experts to discuss orgasmic topics such as nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Here, we will offer lifestyle lessons that can help you lead a fulfilling, joyous, and orgasmic lifestyle. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to episode 85 of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with Venus O'Hara. In this Book Moon episode, we discuss personal brand. We speak with Philip VanDusen, a personal brand expert. I also review the book Calling in the One by Catherine Woodward Thomas. The episode ends with a guided meditation with affirmations for your personal brand. But first, let me share with you my own journey with my personal brand. Let's talk about personal brand. Yesterday, on the 18th of July, I celebrated my 15-year blogiversary. 15 years ago, I made a very bold decision to leave my job in luxury real estate and start my blog, venusohara.org. I must confess that I was very scared about this idea. And before I actually took the plunge, it was kind of like an artistic side hustle for me. I used to do erotic photos as a hobby. And I had a lot of, when I was in luxury real estate, I had a lot of clients who had online businesses. And this is 15 years ago. So having online businesses was not so common as it is now. And blogs were not as common either. And the word influencer did not exist. So I had a very good friend who was an SEO guru, who was a WordPress guru. I didn't even know what SEO was, search engine optimization. I didn't even know what WordPress was. Anyway, I befriended this guy. He's been supporting me since day one, still a friend today. And when I left my job, we spent many days together, just kind of co-working at his place or my place. And he taught me everything I know about WordPress, how to, create a post, how to optimize a text and things like that. So it was very instrumental in my growth. And before actually creating the website, it was a bit of a crazy idea for me to live from my art. But I did know some people who had, let's say, subscription websites with members areas. And I thought, I want to do that. And I just was so passionate about objectifying myself in a way that was quite artistic. Because when I did fetish photos, I was the art director. I wasn't just posing according to someone else's whims and tastes. I had a very clear idea of how I wanted to, or the images that I wanted to create. So I created a fetish glossary on my website with 50 fetishes. And I was interested in creating imagery to represent each one. Because I did know people who had fetish websites people who went really deep into a certain fetish. And I thought that must be so boring to just be doing tickling all day long or feet all day long. But I was really up for the variety of discovering different things, such as ankle fetish or blindfolds or high heels, things like that. So every different photo shoot had a different angle. And sometimes it wasn't even with my face, it was just a body part. Because fetishism is when you have a sexual response to something that isn't sexual. So, for example, a non-sexual stimulus, such as a non-reproductive body part. It could be the neck, it could be the feet. Or objects such as high heels. Or it could be an action such as tickling or smoking or, doing sport, things like that. So I was very interested in this type of imagery because it was non-explicit. And what I really loved about it, it was kind of like an interplay between myself, the model and the focus of the photo, and the spectator. For example, if I make a photo with a blindfold and just an open mouth, there's nothing explicit about that, but you can create your own narrative around that image. It's not all given away. It's actually stimulating and the imagination. So I was really into that type of creating those types of images. And for many years, I used to think that my ideal audience was a male audience. And not that males are no longer welcome, but it was my first objective. And just because I didn't think that women would be really interested in that art. But at the same time, it was an expression of body positivity, because we see so many images in magazines that have been retouched, and especially now with AI, excuse me, and makeup trends such as contouring, filtering on social media apps, etc. So everything we are seeing is very retouched. I mean, even from the the origin of the image, we're seeing people who are getting Botox and filler at younger ages, and fake eyelashes and fake eyebrows and fake lips. It's all so fake. And then on top of that, you're getting the makeup of contouring, which is kind of creating this optical illusion. And then on top of that, you have filters. So everything we are seeing is a bit of a lie. Whereas I was interested in showing a raw image, because all of my photos are unfiltered. No Photoshop, everything is natural. And whenever I have seen photos that are natural, I find it so refreshing. I mean, before I got into real estate, I used to print erotic books. That's how I kind of got into this world, because I was so fascinated by these worlds. And I remember there was a magazine in England called Scarlet. It was a women's magazine. And I remember one of the first editions that I ever had. And I opened the page, and there was a spread with a woman wearing lingerie. And I remember the picture of her ass, you could see compression marks and goosebumps. And I thought, wow, we never see that. That's so great. It's so nice to see that, to see a more human representation. And also it was interesting because when I was creating this fetish glossary with so many different fetishes, 50 different kinks, I omitted feet because I hated my feet. Even when I was having full body massages, I would always say to the masseur, the masseuse, don't touch my feet, because I just had such a complex about my feet. And this comes from my whole life. I just look at them and I think, wow, I've got short, fat toes, and because of my very pale skin in the summer, they become pink and sweaty. And my feet sweat a lot. I have to kind of get very unsexy sandals because I walk a lot. So I had all of these ideas about how unattractive my feet were. So I decided not to include feet in my repertoire of imagery. And what was interesting from that was that when I discovered, let's say, feet fetish forums and websites, that the feet that you see there are not perfect at all. Well, some of them can be aesthetically beautiful, but it wasn't really about that. They're not the type of feet or images that you would see in a foot care advert. Like, for example, if you're looking at a foot care advert, something about keeping your heels smooth, you're going to see this kind of very retouched, perfect foot. But that's not the kind of image that a foot fetishist wants to see. They want to see how you kind of the wrinkles on your soles when you are tickled. There's all these different kinks or different stimuli, let's say. And I actually did a photo. I started taking a few photos of my feet, and I had this incredible response I gained a new following. And it was interesting because this following of my feet, which still exists today, have encouraged me to see my own feet in a whole new way, to see that actually I do like my feet now. They are quite beautiful. I think that I'm not foot care model material at all, but I see the beauty in my feet now. And also my following has encouraged me to stop wearing nail varnish, because nail varnish is very, very toxic. And I don't wear nail varnish on my hands or on my feet anymore, since I learned about how toxic nail varnish is, especially when you're thinking about, the nail is a living part of you and you're putting all these toxins in. And then when if you don't keep it up, if you remove it, then it kind of stains your nails and it looks a bit yellow, and then it kind of weakens your nails as well. So it's just best not to do that. So whenever I go for a pedicure now, it's always, they're always quite surprised that I don't want to be, putting nail varnish on. So that means I get extra time on the massage though, which is really nice. So I really appreciate the fact that my followers have actually helped me to see the beauty of my feet. And if my feet are bringing joy to people, I'm happy about that. And also every day I do a tarot reading on my Instagram, on stories, and I always include my feet. Well, not always, but I'm getting all these DMs about, oh, your feet, wow. And I'm thinking, if I'm bringing someone else joy, they're bringing me joy, is cool, and it's a non-explicit thing, so I don't feel like I've done something. I'm not kind of showing something very intimate about myself at all. But anyway, going back to blogging, but what happened after, focusing on photos for such a long time is that I started to land media deals with big media outlets such as GQ, El Pais, etc. And then suddenly I was asked to focus more on female pleasure. And so that created a big shift in my perception of my own personal brand. And it was great because when I started my blog, I didn't really have a clear objective of where it was going. I just knew I wanted to create a fetish blog, but I was kind of open to see what was going to happen after that. So when I started getting these deal or media collaborations, I was asked to make different types of content, more vanilla content that's more about female pleasure, more about sex toys. And I was like, okay, let's do that. Because I was always interested in sharing my vision of sexuality with the world, because I didn't feel that it was represented in anything else that I was seeing at the time. Because in the early 2000s, there was a trend of erotic memoirs that were based on females having a very kind of masculine expression of sexuality, like being very, very promiscuous and not caring about it, which is fine if that's your story. I think, sexuality is a very personal expression, but my expression was never about promiscuity. It was more about connecting with pleasure, and I didn't really see that around. And I'm more interested in that connection and being connected to pleasure. And it's like, for example, I think content is like sharing your vision, basically. For example, if you go to a life drawing class or any type of drawing class, observational drawing, you have the object that everyone's drawing. But then if you look at, let's say everyone's drawing an apple in a vase or some flowers, or even a nude model. And if you look at, it's the same object, but if you look at the finished pieces at the end, everyone has a very, very different representation of what that object looks like. And that's the same with content. I think everyone is sharing their vision with the world. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with my content, because I didn't feel that my vision was already out there. So yes, it was a kind of easy transition for me to just go into to connect more with female pleasure, and then that got me into starting to work with lots of pleasure product brands in 2014, and so ever since then now I've been reviewing and designing sex toys, which has been a lot of fun, especially the design side. It's so interesting because I've learned so much about anatomy and technology and just things that work, things that don't work. And I've provided so much user expertise, which has been of very high value to the engineers that I've worked with and designers and developers over the years, not just with physical products, but also with apps as well. And that's just been so much fun for me. So much fun to do. So I've kind of felt that my brand has been constantly evolving. There was the phase of the fetish modeling. Then there was the articles. My first media collaboration was for GQ. So I was writing for a male audience. Then I went more into kind of mainstream, then a more female audience, female pleasure, and then more into like the actual just pleasure products. And now, since creating this podcast 3 years ago, I'm going into a space of holistic self-love, which is something that really I'm very passionate about. This is the type of content that I'm making on this podcast. It's the type of content that I consume as an individual. Because now, I don't read stuff about sex toys or fetishism. I'm that's kind of what I'm producing. But I am interested in all of the topics that I share on here about health and nutrition and different health modalities, wellness, and sacred sexuality, spirituality, etc. So now I am starting a new phase of my career. I am actually going to go into the world of creating retreats, and I'm very excited. Probably by the next episode, I'll be able to share more with you, but it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I think retreats are a very special it's a really cool thing to do for a solo holiday. I've always said that retreats are like escaping your life to face yourself, which is really quite profound, because sometimes it's hard to be a solo traveler, due to circumstances. It can be, quite lonely. Not everyone is, capable of spending time alone and being okay with it. But when you're going on a retreat, you're going alone, but you're in this kind of very safe space where oftentimes the connections that are made are quite profound. It's not just like, hey, what's your name? What do you do? It's like, hey, what's your name? What's your trauma? And people are, bonding on a much deeper level. That's been my experience anyway with retreats. So I've been to several retreats. I know what I like, and I'm very passionate about comfort. I want to have retreats where everyone has an ensuite room. And of course, I'm very passionate about vegan food, especially with sharing vegan food, delicious vegan food with non-vegans. That's something I absolutely love, and seeing people really enjoy the food. And also, I am passionate about sobriety. It's going to be a retreat with no alcohol. And I'm also passionate about meditation. Obviously, in every episode on this podcast, I'm sharing meditation. But also, recently, I'm getting into journaling, which has just been amazing. So there's going to be a journaling component in my retreat. And also nature, as well as some workshops that I've been giving. Because that's the kind of, in the last few years, I have been also focusing on public speaking. Being a speaker is amazing because, the online world is quite, detached. You're quite detached from your audience in the sense that I'm in my room now, in my lounge, alone, speaking into the microphone. I have no idea who's listening to this. So hello to whoever you are. I really appreciate your presence here. And that's the same with my YouTube videos as well. I'm making these videos. I have no idea who is on the other end. But when you're in a retreat or a speaking gig, it's just nice to see those faces and get that feedback and the encouragement from people who are positively impacted by my content, which is really encouraging and helps me to keep going. And but that's not to say that I don't appreciate the ones who I don't hear from. So if you are listening right now, I want you to know that I truly do appreciate you. And so I will be sharing more about my retreat very soon. And I've also been coaching people about holistic self-love. I really want, because my mission is to encourage people to prioritize their own pleasure and their own self-care. That's something that I find that is very, very important. It's very important to me. It's something that's just my own journey as well. And I know that people who spend time with me on a, let's say, friend basis, they start to look after themselves more, have more massages or eat more plant-based food or drink less alcohol, things like that. So that's the type of good influence that I want to bring to a massive audience and of people who are going to really take care of themselves. And the premise of this podcast, which I've said many times, the orgasmic lifestyle, it's not about orgasm. Orgasm is part of it, but it's about reaching climax in all areas of life, about life optimization. And it's about books, it's about personal development, it's about being your best version, but in a way that is healthy and sustainable and authentic. So there's a very fine line between actually my life and my work. It's just a vocation at this point. Well, I think it always has been, but now that I've incorporated a more spiritual aspect to it, that's really made a big change for me, because the spirituality for me started in 2017, and that was that created another shift in my content and also in my perception of my work. For example, before that point, I was just thinking about maybe what I wanted to share and how much I was going to get paid for it. Whereas now I'm thinking, what do I want to contribute? What's the point of this? Because sometimes there was a bit of, how would I say, a bit of ego stroking when I was just sharing one of my stories. I was reliving an experience which was quite erotic or something like that. Whereas now I just want to share things that are going to make the world a better place, and also to bring joy into someone else's life and inspiration and things like that. So it's about a contribution to the evolution of the planet, and also to help people to overcome sexual shame, because I think there's so many obstacles about obstacles to pleasure and intimacy, whereas I do think sexuality is what moves the world. That's why we're here, and it's a topic that we should embrace. But self-love goes beyond sexuality. Sexuality is part of it, and I do believe that presenting the topic of sexuality in amongst other things such as health, books, nutrition, spirituality, I think it makes it more digestible and much more powerful and less kind of taboo. So yeah, that's my my little speech for today. So I'm so passionate about the evolution of my personal brand, and I love the fact that I haven't limited myself to three topics or one topic, because that is something that I've read in personal brand books. And I've sometimes felt, that feels a bit limiting for me. Should I be doing that? Because I think a lot of times when we read about things, or the way to do things, it could be any topic. We can be thinking it can challenge how we are doing things already, and it could make us maybe think that we're not doing it the right way because it's not like everyone else. But now I've just come to a point where I'm just going to do what feels right in my body, and right now it just feels good to actually start moving more into a space of self-love. And if you're interested in actually working with me, just contact me at venus@venusohara.org, because I am creating different programs right now, and I am working with people. I'm more of an accountability mentor slash mentor. I wouldn't say I was a coach because that's a different skill set, but I do love, love, love helping others to prioritize their own self-care and pleasure. Yeah. So here is to 15 years since I started my journey, which has been, there's been many ups and downs. And I am just so grateful that I made it this far and that I've created a life of comfort. And one of the best things about my life, one of the best things has to be 15 years with no alarm in the morning. Oh my God. If that's not luxury, I don't know what is. But that is the best part of my life. And that is the thing that actually inspired me to start this podcast, because I realized that I had a lot to share with the world about lifestyle. And not having an alarm is such a key component of having a good quality of life and to maintain my vitality and just general chilled outness. Yeah, so let's talk to today's guest, who is an expert in personal brand. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We'll be speaking with Philip VanDusen, a personal brand expert. Philip VanDusen, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. Thank you so much for taking part in this interview today. I'm very happy to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Sure. I and in branding and design. Essentially, I proselytize about the power of branding and brand building, to build your own personal brand as well as brands for your own business or your clients' businesses.
So what inspired you to follow this path?
Well, it's funny. It wasn't a linear path by any means. I mean, I actually started off as a fine artist. I have my master's degree in painting. I taught painting and drawing for a period of time before I kind of fell into the fashion industry, through the medium of t-shirt design, and that kind of enabled me to get all of my teaching yayas out, by managing creatives. And I spent about 15 years in the fashion industry, and then moved over to the branding agency side and worked with a couple different global firms and have worked with probably a third of the Fortune 100, big brands. And then I eventually, about 8 years ago, went off on my own and started my own consultancy. So now I work with small to medium-sized businesses and help creative professionals build their personal brands and survive in this challenging environment.
Amazing. So I came across your content. I was looking for personal branding content on YouTube, and I found a video where you shared a link to your personal brand wheel, which I downloaded straight away. I thought it was such a great tool. For those who are unfamiliar with it, could you tell us what that is?
Sure. And it's funny that you bring it up because I was going to actually offer that to your listeners as
Uh,
a little free giveaway. I Developing a personal brand is can be complicated, and the more you think about it, the more it can become very confusing. And I personally feel it's exceptionally important in this day and age to really kind of own yourself, essentially have personal agency in your professional career. And like I said, I spent 30 years working for the man, for big global corporations and big agencies. And when I went off on my own, I realized I'd spent 30 years building other people's brands and I never built my own. And I had about a two-page Wix website at the time, and which was basically a picture of me and my resume and a slideshow portfolio. And I realized that I hadn't developed any content. I hadn't really, there was no, I had no digital presence out there. I hadn't established my level of experience or authority in any kind of visual way. Um, and so I had to do that basically when I started off on my own, mostly to get clients because none of my big old clients were going to be any use to me in the work that I was doing now. And so over this last 8 years, I've worked very hard at developing a personal brand through content, through my podcast and YouTube channel, as you mentioned, and my newsletter, which is called Brand Muse. And in this process, just about a year ago, I decided to really kind of think about the process of building a personal brand. And I've done a lot of kind of work on my own, and through coaches and consultants to develop my own, professional outlook and approach. And one of the tools that I had used in working with a coach at one point was the life wheel. You might be
Oh, I love
familiar
it.
with the life wheel, which is a
Mm.
great, personal evaluation kind of tool. And I was thinking about that tool and I thought, what if we applied this principle to personal branding and the complexity of personal branding? And so I developed the personal brand wheel, which is essentially a tool that's broken into 12 different segments. And you can use it to map out or evaluate where you are in your own personal brand building journey, and also to give you kind of an easy to approach visual that can help you see where you may need to do more work or something that you may have forgotten about or an aspect of branding that you maybe hadn't even thought about. And so I use this in my mastermind community that I run for creative professionals, which is called Bonfire. And I use it to help people evaluate themselves kind of coming into that community, where they are in their own journey. And so they can also share it with the other people in the community. So those mastermind members can see what that member's goals are going to be, what they're going to be working on, and kind of help them grow and progress.
Would you like to share some of the what the areas are in that wheel?
Sure, absolutely. So it's kind of broken into four quadrants, four main quadrants. One is foundation, which is really kind of what is your story, what's your mission, what's your purpose, what is the value that you're bringing to the marketplace. The next quadrant is called omnipresence, and that's where you show up, how you're showing up, your digital footprint and your physical footprint, really, if you're going to conferences, et cetera.
Mm.
The next quadrant is called, excuse me, it's called engagement. And that is, how are you engaging on social media? How are you putting your voice out there? Where are you developing conversations? How are you developing relationships? What kind of feedback are you getting? What kind of feedback are you giving, et cetera? So what is that engagement? And then the fourth quadrant, this is one of the ones that a lot of people forget about, is called transformation. And that is, what is your own personal transformation that you've gone through? And what kind of transformations have you enabled through other people or through your clients or through your audience or subscribers? And how do you capture that transformation that they are experiencing? How do you, build a story around it? And also, how do you publicize it? Essentially, how do you bring those transformations that you've created through your brand or your work? How do you showcase that to the rest of the world so it becomes a virtuous cycle of you're creating transformations in people and then them seeing that having been done and you're attracting new people. So that's kind of those are the major pieces. And each of those quadrants are broken down into three different sections. And I don't want to get, too deep
Okay.
into each one of those because it would take up the whole podcast.
We'll
But
share a link anyway. We'll share a link so
yeah.
people
Oh,
can
absolutely.
to
So
your.
if you are curious, if you go to my website, philipvandusen.com, and go to philipvandusen.com/PBW for personal brand wheel. You can download the personal brand wheel, and there are instructions that come with it and kind of some questions and prompts that help you fill it out. And it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool tool. So there's a lot of talk about personal branding recently. Does it mean being an influencer? I mean, I think people might think of personal brand, they might think of content creators or influencers. Does it go beyond that?
Yeah, it really does. And the funny thing is that most people think of personal brands as being people who are independent,
Mm.
consultants or freelancers or who have their own businesses. But the thing is that personal brands companies are valuing employees who have personal brands and are actively seeking new employees who have personal brands to be employees. So developing a level of agency and independence and your own voice, even if you're an employee of another company, is of great value. And it's the most important thing about it is that it gives you um, it gives you a voice that you own. And when you change companies or when you move employers or you're made redundant or you get laid off and you have to look for a new job, it's one of those things that you are carrying with you. It's transportable. It's something that you own. Because that's one of the things that happens to people when they leave a job is that they suddenly that business card that they had that carried their title in the company they worked for, which carried so much power, is suddenly gone. And they are just left with a LinkedIn profile and a resume, and they may feel untethered or unvalued or not really be able to quantify or put their finger on what is their value, what is it that they're bringing to the table. And so building a personal brand helps you develop that kind of independence, even if you are an employee. But certainly, it's incredibly important for anyone who's an independent consultant or a freelancer who has to establish an online, a presence and an offer and develop a following.
Yeah. So in the years that you've been in this industry, what changes have you seen or evolutions in the personal brand sphere? Because that wasn't really a thing years ago, having, even LinkedIn wasn't around. So it's just, I think your identity was the company you worked for. And if
Yeah.
you lost that, you're kind of in a bit of a crisis.
Yeah. I mean, I think that with the real explosion of content for the everyman, essentially, has
Mm,
really happened in probably the last 8 to 10 years. I mean,
mm,
it's been a while, but certainly in the last 6 year, content has just absolutely exploded. And to a certain extent, I was just discussing this with a colleague yesterday. In fact, I think I think we're starting to almost reach what they used to talk about peak oil, right? When oil was on the downturn or the availability of it was that. I think to a certain extent we're almost reaching peak content in the fact that there's so much content out there and so much noise and AI and ChatGPT and some of the um, artificial intelligence tools that make it incredibly easy to develop content are going to, I think, push that explosion and that level of um, volume of content hitting the digital sphere to a maximum. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in terms of what AI does to content. Um, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, I guess we've been in the right time then. You've been in this industry the right time for seeing all these changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it gives everybody an opportunity to be visible and to be heard.
Hmm.
And I think that's the real value in it, is it gives you a platform where previously no one had a platform. The only platform that you had was if you somehow managed to be able to speak on stage at a conference or something like that, or, physical networking or whatnot. But this gives you it gives you a global possibility of a global footprint for what it is the value that you're bringing to the table.
Great. So do you think it's necessary to niche down when humans are so multifaceted and much more than products?
I think that it's very important that you inject a level of personal story into
Hmm.
everything that you do. And I think that that's one of those things that AI cannot take away from us is the humanity. And people buy people buy from people, they don't buy from brands. People don't trust nameless companies, nameless corporations. Um, and advertising has injected that into us, that's distrust of corporate America. And so the more that you can dial in your humanity, your story, your authenticity, your frailty, your wins, your losses into your content and into your presence that you bring to the business world or the social media world, the better, because it really makes you memorable. And it also um, the more vulnerable that you can be, and this is one of the hardest things to do actually as a content creator, the more vulnerable that you are, the more people can identify. with you. And so that's one of those things that is something I work on every day, to be honest with you, is that it's difficult the larger the audience that you grow to
Mhm.
be to let yourself be seen as not perfect.
Yeah, but that's a
But
great
that's yeah.
magnet, I think, for people. People love that. And also about vulnerability. It's a big word right now about, in relation to authenticity. But I think a lot of people are, holding back on their personal brands because they don't want to, inspire haters or be judged by others. So how personal should a personal brand be? And also, for people who are afraid of, vulnerability, and I know some people might want to promote their business, maybe coaching or what have you, but they don't really want to be out there in terms on social media. What kind of solutions could exist for people like that, who just don't want to be too so vulnerable or visible?
Yeah, yeah. And in my mastermind community that I run, there are a number of people there who don't want to put their face to the content they produce, or they don't want to be, have themselves front and center on their websites. And it's not absolutely critical that you show up as a human being,
Mhm.
uh, visibly, but it certainly helps. And there's
Mhm.
ways of going about that, which you can, I guess, mitigate your exposure, so to speak. You can either
Mhm.
do it in more kind of closed settings where you might have a webinar and people have to sign up to show up to it, or you're offering content in more of a kind of a closed or gated way. Podcasts are a really great way to go about
Mhm.
that because it's not visible. You don't have to, publish the video of your podcast interview as many
Mhm.
do. And it can be a very, very personal, intimate medium because you're there in people's earbuds
Mhm.
and showing up in their lives when they could be driving or meditating or sitting in their living room. And so there's ways of bringing your message out to the world where you're not really exposing yourself dramatically. And you can take baby steps. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the thing. It's like you can just try stuff out and and see what feels good and pursue that. And over time, it's interesting, you get more adventurous. You know,
Yeah.
you will start you will start to feel comfortable with what you're doing in the beginning and you're going, oh, what if I did a live stream? I'd been doing videos for on YouTube for, I don't know, 2.5 years before I did my first live stream. And it wasn't that it wasn't available. It just was that I didn't have the confidence to do it. I wasn't sure exactly what I would do on a live stream. It felt very exposing. And so, but after, doing 150 videos on YouTube, and getting a lot of comments and subscribers, and people asking me to do live streams, I built the confidence to be able to do it. So it's just like anything. You start off, you try it, you fail, you have to build confidence over time and then you grow.
Yeah, you know what? I just written down here. I've done 1,000 videos, 10 years, and I haven't done a single live stream.
Venus, Venus. Oh my God. We
I
have to
know.
get you on a live stream. You would be great.
Yeah,
You would
because
be
it's
great.
interesting.
Absolutely.
I know I have to step out
It's
of
so
the
much
comfort zone.
fun.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, Venus, as soon as you do it, it's like incredibly addictive
Oh, can you imagine? It's a
because
high. Yeah, you get high. It's
it is. You
literally.
do. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is when you know you're live and you know
Yeah.
people are watching you and they're
Yeah.
commenting and they're showing up in chat, it's really, really energizing. Like
Mhm.
my assistant teases me because she says you couldn't do a live stream under an hour if you tried. And I always go on and think I'm just going to be on in half an hour. And then, an hour and 15 into it, I'm still chatting and answering questions. And, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, because I do premieres, so I do get that kind of live chat
Oh,
thing. So I do
see, I've
that.
never done a premiere.
Oh well. Well,
Yeah.
that's so what I did is I've taken advantage of things like Vlogmas. I don't celebrate Christmas, but just to kind of get that daily upload, that was something that's really helped me over the years. It's just because I never tried to be, or it was never my intention to make videos. I just had companies who wanted me to do video reviews, so of
Mm.
products. So that's how it started. I was so shy at the beginning. It just took me a long time to make videos. I had to, edit them. Then in May 2018, I did a 30-day challenge uploading every single day. The first few were
Wow.
really wooden. by day 24, it was a one take. So now I do one take videos with no editing, and I feel very comfortable with long form. I'm less comfortable with short form in TikTok, or even, I've never been live, and I've done live on Instagrams only if someone's paying me to do it. But it's just I just I'm quite scared of just doing it. But I think now I have two YouTube channels. So I have one for the podcast and then one for Venus O'Hara. So I might, and the one Venus O'Hara's got 132,000 subs, but I want to kind of promote the other one a bit more. So yeah, you inspired me. So I'm going to try and take the
Absolutely, do
plunge.
it. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can
But the
imagine.
funny thing is
Mhm.
like you will notice that you will jump back in time to like
Yeah.
video 20 when you feel wooden and you feel
Mhm.
tentative and but you'll open up.
Yeah, because there's so many tools now. I'm looking at a lot of creators out there and trying to see, which business model is most attractive to me, because what I love about a lot of people who've been on this podcast, they have this incredible business model, which is they are selling courses. They're doing one-on-ones at a premium rate, and then they've got a book and a TED talk, So that's the kind of thing that I really want to create for myself because I never had this idea of personal brand. I was just creating content and getting money for it at the beginning. So that the idea of branding just came to me very late in life. And I've got to tell you, one of the things that really I'm one of my biggest regrets after 15 years not having a newsletter list. I mean, how terrible is that? An email list.
Yep,
Is that a
it
crime?
is. It's a missed opportunity, but
Yeah.
you can do it now. That's the
Yeah.
thing. And you do what you do and you
Hmm.
build and add over time. I mean, I started with a newsletter and I started with a news. I had no YouTube channel, I had no podcast, and I put out a newsletter every 2 weeks for 6 months. And then I started a YouTube channel and I drove people from my YouTube channel to my newsletter. And then 2.5 years later, I started a podcast. And then I built a course. And now I have a mastermind community, which is a membership community. And I do one-on-one coaching and consulting and client work, obviously, on top of all of that. It's pretty crazy. But you just you build and you add on to as you go through the journey. And there's no absolutely right way to do it. Um, but I would slap your hand and say you absolutely have to start an
I can
email
feel it.
list.
Yeah. That's the first
Because
thing.
here's the thing, Venus. The thing about email is that it's just like podcasting. It's very intimate
Yeah.
and you own it. It's
Hmm.
one of those things that social channels can go poof, right?
Hmm.
Talk to all the people who built $1 million brands on Vine. Like
Hmm.
Vine is gone. It like went poof one day.
Hmm.
And Twitter, I have close colleagues who have built big businesses on Twitter. And Twitter is a dumpster fire right now. There are people who are leaving Twitter in droves to go to Threads and other
Hmm.
platforms, to Discord, etc. And so you can't trust social channels. You have to make sure that you're building a safety net where you control the conversation between you and your audience. And an email list is um, the most ownable digital real estate that you have. You have two. You have your website is
Hmm.
one. You own that. No one can take it away. And you have your email list. And
Hmm.
everything else is completely ethereal and could go poof tomorrow. So
Hmm.
get on that.
Yeah, I need to do it. But I was one of the reasons that was I was delaying it was because I didn't know what my hook kind of free gift could be. But now I've
Mm,
worked it out because I'm going to do something based on the that wheel of life as well, but not very different because I create meditations. I'm very passionate about
mm,
affirmations. So at the end of my podcast, I do this whispered affirmation that's related to the topic of the podcast. And I also have a profile on Insight Timer, which is a very big in meditation app. So I do this whispering like ASMR style. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 12 areas of life. I'm going to make 5 affirmations that are very powerful for each area, as well as some overall affirmations about I attract
cool.
miracles, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to make a half an hour, maybe 15-minute file, but then an 8-hour file. So, you can listen to it while you sleep because affirmations are so powerful to connect with subconscious. And it's something that's really influenced my life. And there's lots of
Mm.
science to support that. So that's going to be my fight. It's going to be the life upgrade meditation or something like that. So by the time this comes out, it'll be ready. It will be ready. So sign up to my podcast, to my newsletter. Anyone listening to this. So that's my idea. It was taking me such a long time to think about what is the thing, but everyone wants to improve their life. It's my challenge has been I'm interested in a lot of topics because I was doing, sexuality for so many years, but this podcast is about reaching climax in all areas of life. And it came about because I had an interview with Marie Claire Brazil years ago, and the woman who was interviewing me was really stressed. She said, "I'm going to be late. I'm in traffic." And I said, "Okay, fine." When we got on the call, I told her that I have no alarm since 2009, and she was just like, "Wow." So I realized that I had a lot of lifestyle things that I wanted to share with the world, and that's what the
Mm.
premise of this podcast. It's about, reading and sobriety, nutrition, spirituality, health, all of these other topics as well. So I do a
Yeah,
book
we
review
could go
in
off
every,
on, we could go, I'm way into a lot of those topics. We could go, we could go
but
off on a lot of tangents.
that's the challenging thing when you want to have a personal brand. It's like, so my viewers are expecting a certain type of content from me, but I'm into spirituality. I'm actually writing a book now about orgasmic manifestation, which is like about how to use this energy to manifest, which is a very unknown topic. But I'm trying to be interested in the kind of like a lot of wholesome lifestyle things that I how I live my life. I'm just converting it into content basically. And I'm also a vegan, so if you mention vegan, that can really put people off. So, so I have to be very careful. And so I was thinking, what is the thing I can attract, get people to sign up? So now I think it's the, upgrade your life meditation, because everyone wants to
Mm.
upgrade their life. I
And I
think.
found that the content
Mhm.
that I do, I mean, a lot of content I do is on branding and marketing and design
Mhm.
and things like that. But I very often foray into mindset and to manifestation.
Oh,
And
wow.
I just recently did a video on creative mental fitness, and it was much less about creativity as it was for self-care and mindset and physical fitness and nutrition um, and sobriety and things of
Mm.
that nature, which are much more lifestyle focused. And that's one of the things that I think that content creators, when they're building an audience, if you share your whole self
Mhm.
and you don't ignore, if you're completely myopic to just your piece of business or the one piece of business value that you bring to the world, you're not a whole person and you're not really being true to yourself, I think, entirely. And you're doing a, to a certain extent, a disservice to the people who you're delivering your value to because you don't, no one compartmentalizes their life, right? All of our pieces of our lives blend into each other. So if you ignore those blending moments or those interdependencies, then you're not really giving all of value that you could give. And in my particular case, I work with creative professionals and creatives are very emotional people and they wear their heart on the sleeves and their creativity on their sleeves a lot of the time. And so you have to take in consideration mindset and manifestation and belief systems and physicality and all those different areas which feed into your ambition and your emotion and your energy and what you bring to the table as a professional. You can't ignore those things. And the funny thing is the more content I do on things like
Mhm.
that, the more responses and engagement I'm getting because it really, really resonates um, with people when you speak to them on that level.
Yeah, I think what you said now is written down here, mindset, and that's a really big thing. And I think you have to have the right mindset when you are creating a personal brand. I mean, I know, for example, it can appeal to, vanity in the case of content creation or influencers. Whereas for me, I feel I'm quite shy, really, even though, I love the lifestyle I've created. So I had a spiritual awakening in 2016. So I realized that it wasn't about me, it was just about the message. And that really shifted how I made my content. But what's been I've been struggling with because I feel like I'm at a plateau now, but I want to go big. I've just read this book, the Magic of Thinking Big. So I'm gonna apply all those lessons. But mindset is so big, is such a big topic because it's about how worthy you see your content, how helpful you see it. For example, yesterday I interviewed this woman who has a much smaller following than I have, but she's applying much more professionalism and intention to her content. She's got a room in her house that's padded out for podcasts. I don't have that. It's just she's really, focusing on it a lot more. So I'm thinking, wow, it really inspired me to see other people, really put their heart and soul into what they're doing, and also assuming the persona of someone with a very strong personal brand.
Mm.
Step out of that shyness and just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the hardest thing to do to start. And that I
Mm,
focus a lot on the message of just starting because
mm,
it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. But the thing that I try to encourage people to understand and remember is that when you start doing content or putting yourself out there as a brand in any way, no one's watching. See, everyone always thinks, I'm going to do this and everyone's going to criticize me and everyone's going to be watching and they're going to be paying attention. The beauteous thing of doing content is that at the beginning, you have no audience. No
mm.
one is watching and you're completely free to get out there and be stupid and make mistakes and be stiff and, get dry mouth and all those things that happen to you when you start doing those things. And you can practice and you can get better, and your audience will filter in over time as you refine your message and your presence. And it's one of those things that helps de de-terrify people in a way, to know that no one's there, right? And
Mm.
and it's, on one hand, you're like, what? No one cares about my message. And, there aren't going to be 50 million people watching me when I do my first live stream. But the answer to that is no. And that's a good thing because you're going to be figuring it out at the beginning.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's what's important to me has been trying to make that shift from being scared about doing something to actually being looking forward to it. So
Oh, yeah.
hopefully that will happen with so in your live stream, did you have actually a script that you're gonna, or you just press record and just kind of went with it the first
I
time?
do both. I mean,
Yeah.
at the beginning, the very first one I did was in what's called an AMA, which is Ask Me Anything. And I just
Okay.
turned it on and I said, hey, anyone have any questions? And they started asking me questions. I mean, at that point, I had, I think, 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And
Mm.
so I had a following, and there were,
Mm.
I don't know, 150 people in the live streams. And so I got a
Oh
lot of
wow.
questions. People wanted to know what was going on, or wanted to pick my brain on stuff. And then over time, I started to do live streams, which are on particular topics. They were kind of, mini webinars, so to speak.
That's
And
cool.
I make bullet pointed notes where I just make sure I had, was going to hit on all the topical themes that I wanted to talk about. But a lot of times it's very off the cuff. It's not deeply scripted in any way. I kind of just give myself a bunch of talking points, and then I find myself able to kind of ramble through them.
So we're talking about it was something you said earlier about creativity. How do you deal with like writer's block or creative blocks? I mean, do you always you must have times when you have to, deliver some work to a client and then you just don't have the
Yeah.
ideas. Do you have any tips
I
on that?
never have creator's block.
Okay,
I
that's
don't.
amazing.
And the reason why I don't is a process that I employ, which is that,
Okay.
and I brought this, I think, from the fashion industry, my work in the fashion industry, is that I take inspiration from anywhere and
Uh,
everywhere. And whenever I have any kind of a little creative spark or idea, or I see some other content where I think, what's my take on that? Or I don't agree with that. Or that's absolutely fascinating. I want to learn more about it. I'll take note of it. And I keep a Google spreadsheet on my open in my browser all the time and on my phone. And whenever I get an idea, I'll just jot it down really quickly. And when I was doing videos in the very beginning, I started doing videos and I wrote down 20 ideas for videos and I started doing videos. And by the time I was on the 20th video, I had a list of 150 things in that spreadsheet that I wanted to do videos on. So
oh
you
wow.
just have to like open up. It's a practice. It's just like meditation. It's like you kind of have to open yourself up to inspiration and take it and recognize it whenever it happens. And the other thing is that nothing is new under the sun. Like in graphic design, there's very, very little that's absolutely brand new.
Mhm.
And so when you find inspiration for design or for music or for anything that you do, you are you have to open yourself up to looking at what other people are doing and say, what's my take on that? Or that's an interesting subject. I've never addressed that subject before. And and to pay attention to what other people are doing and take inspiration from it. Not to copy them, not to, plagiarize,
Mhm.
but to be open to the fact that you have a perspective on that. And in the fashion industry, one of the things I'll just mention this, people wonder how do all of these fashion companies come up with the same color and the same styles and the same cuts of clothing every season, right? You go out to all these different stores or online or whatever, and you go, oh, like my wife recently, she hates frilly things. That's not her style. And ruched sleeves became like a thing. You couldn't find a blouse or a top anywhere online that didn't have like some sort of ruching on it, right? Puffiness. And how do these companies all know to do this? Well, the reason why they do is because they all copy each other and they all shop the same stores in the same countries for inspiration every year. And they're all seeing the same things and they're all sampling their garments in the same factories in Asia or India or Milan. And it's a very incestuous industry. So they're all being inspired by each other and they're all picking up on each other's cues. They all go to the same trend shows. And so they naturally start to develop the same kinds of products. And it's the same thing in the content world, you know?
Mm,
You just have to go out there, be inspired, and capture that inspiration and internalize it.
amazing. So you mentioned sobriety earlier. How has that helped you with your creative process?
Yeah, well, as I said, I haven't mentioned this a lot on social
Mm,
media, but I have been sober 35 years, just
wow.
celebrating my 35th anniversary. And so I got sober as a young man, but um, it was earth shattering. I'll just put it
Mm.
that way. I mean, I, I was I abused alcohol and drugs when I was a younger man. And, I was surprised I survived as long as I did. But when I got sober, it really, really kind of opened my eyes and it took away kind of the veil of um, not being able to see things clearly and not being able to evaluate. I was, as an addict, I was um, everything I did was self-serving. And as an addict of any kind, you are completely self-absorbed and your pleasure is what's the most important thing. And it's difficult to open yourself up to be inspired by the world when you're in that kind of a fog. And so taking away that veil, that curtain between you and life, the experiences of life, um, can really open just floodgates of inspiration and ideas um, and you learn how not to fear the world and how to not fear the process and sometimes not fear not knowing. Um, and that's one of those things that, over time and becoming more mature, you learn, you get more comfortable with the idea that you don't know everything and that um, life is a learning journey.
So were you in the fashion industry when this happened? Because I can imagine the fashion industry is a place where there's lots of things happening that are
No, I wasn't.
so wholesome.
It was before I was still a fine artist at that time. And
Okay.
I it was actually when I got sober is when I got my first real good teaching gig in the south of France. And
Oh, wow.
I was teaching painting and drawing there in Lacoste in France. It was and when I came back to the United States, I moved to New York City, and that kind of started my whole journey into the fashion industry because I was creating monotypes, kind of printmaking there in France, and when I came back, I started putting those monotypes on T-shirts and selling them to boutiques in New York City, and that's kind of how it all started. So it would actually my career came about after I got sober.
That's amazing. It's so great to have that, be convinced by sobriety when you're in environments that are not known for being sober. I think it's just such a
It
great
was
thing.
difficult. Let me put it that
Mm.
way. I mean, I was in very early sobriety working as a teacher at a college where there were a lot of, junior year abroad American
Oh, wow.
students who were artists. And we were
Yeah.
in the Luberon Valley in the south of France, and there was a lot of partying going on. And it was quite difficult to maintain. But I did it. I hold that up as kind of a badge of honor in a way.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of been there've been a lot of times of euphoria in my career, like getting emails where you get a book deal or really big things happen to me in the first few years. And I remember just, having this ecstatic feeling and wanting to celebrate with cava, which is the Catalan version of champagne. But now I don't have that, and it's kind of cool just to be. I feel more grounded. And what the best thing about sobriety for me is, on Fridays I go to a private members club. They have this after work thing, and I have such a fun life that I don't have that need to have a drink on a Friday to escape the week because my week is
Mm,
cool. You know what I mean? It's a really nice feeling.
that is.
Yeah.
And I would encourage any creative, and creative people have a tendency to fall victim, I think, to abusing substances because there is this mystique, there's this historical kind of like romanticism to doing that. And it's just such a slippery slope that I just caution people to be very careful about that. And if they find themselves on the downside of that slippery slope, to get some help to get sober because they're, the life of a creative with a clear mind and is a much better place to be.
Yeah, I think the allure is part of like that, altering your perceptions. I think people can see that that is maybe a good thing for creativity when in fact it can impair a lot of your creativity and production for sure, you know.
Yes, well,
Mm.
that's absolutely absolutely true.
I had a big question for you now. What is the best book about personal brand? Because I just bought this actually. I'm reading this at the moment. It's pretty cool. You know this book?
I don't. I don't
I
know
really
that
like
book.
it. I was looking at
B,
it
told
on
about B
Amazon.
by Jessica Ziwig. So for anyone who's listening, we should know
Yeah.
what
Oh,
book
sorry. Yeah. I do
Venus is
remember the
holding
people
up.
listening. Yeah, so I actually got this recently because I was looking on Amazon for books about personal brand, but I wanted one that was kind of recent because I mean, things from 2007 might not be applicable today. So do you have any books that you would recommend do you read
Yeah,
about on the
looking over
subject?
at my shelf. There's a book called Creative Confidence, which is put out by, and it's not really on personal branding by the guys at IDEO. But I think more than anything else, the one book that's helped me that I talk about a whole lot, and it's not really on personal branding, it's really more on mindset and thinking,
Mhm.
is The Power of Now by Eckhart
Okay.
Tolle.
Mhm.
I think that that book has done more for me in terms of mindset than
Mhm.
almost anything else, because it helps you be present. And I
Mhm.
think being present is kind of one of the core competencies of creativity and of relationship building and of being true to yourself. And I think all those sorts of things are what really are key to personal branding is understanding yourself, your story, your purpose, your value. And if you're too stuck in replaying old tapes of the past or too fearful about projecting things that may never happen, learning to stay mentally in the now is is a way to make sure that you're discovering and taking full stock of yourself, as well as really taking full stock of what's around you and who your audience will be and what you have to bring to the table and what value you can offer them. Um, and so, anyway, so for me, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle was really transformative.
So I ask all of my guests the question, which is the book that changed your life? Would that be yours?
I think that's, yeah,
Mm.
that's definitely the book.
Great. So, and which phrase or affirmation or quote do you live by?
Um, I have this quote that I actually came up with, which I try to live by, which is dare to suck.
Okay.
And then what
Explain.
that means is that you just have to do it. You just start. I mean,
Mm,
everybody sucks at whatever they do when they start. You
mm,
can't not suck, right? I use this analogy all the time that if you want to learn to play tennis, you can buy great tennis clothes, you can watch 20 tennis videos, you can buy the coolest tennis racket, you can watch a bunch of tennis matches on television. But until you get on a tennis court and start hitting balls all over the place, over the backstop and, into the net, you aren't going to learn how to play tennis. And so if you want to do anything, you got to jump in. And when you start, you're going to suck. So that's my phrase. It's like dare to suck because you start that way, but it gets better.
So I'll bear that in mind when I do my first YouTube live. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Venus, dare to suck in YouTube Live.
So where can people find you?
Sure. Go to my website, philipvandusen.com.
Hmm.
And if you go to philipvandusen.com/PBW, you can get the personal brand wheel, the tool we talked about at the beginning of the video. And you can reach me and see a lot of my content and portfolio and my coaching offer and Bonfire, my mastermind community. All that stuff is available through my website.
Amazing. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Venus. It's been a real pleasure being here. It's a great conversation, and thanks for inviting me.
The book I'm reading now is Calling in the One, which is 7 Weeks to Attract the Love of Your Life by Catherine Woodward Thomas. And she's also the author of Conscious Uncoupling. I actually read this book a few years ago, maybe the same year I started this podcast. And I'm mentioning it now because one of my friends, or one of the people I'm giving the coaching to, this self-love coaching, she asked me, which books should I read? Which books were the most life-changing for you? And I know that she's looking for love and she has some kind of wounds to heal from her past. And I recommended this book because I think it's a great way to remove the obstacles that are preventing love from entering your life, and also to address some trauma from your childhood and the early relationships to clear space for new love to enter. So that's why I recommended this book. And also, excuse me, oh my God, I need to get a glass of water. And I was interested in sharing about this book because it's a 7-week course. So you read about maybe 3 pages a day. So it's very attainable, not too intimidating, even though it's a kind of a big book. But you only read it a tiny bit every day. You shouldn't rush it. It's very important just to do, to honor those 49 days. So reading about 3 pages, and every single day there's an exercise to do. So it's good to get a notebook as well to actually do the exercises. And it's very thought-provoking, especially when you start to analyze previous relationships, childhood, and different relationships that you've seen around you growing up, etc. And another reason I wanted to talk about this today, because I'm kind of I'm fascinated by that song of the summer, which is "Looking for a Man in Finance" or whatever it is. Trust Fund Blue Eyes 6'5". That's not, sorry, 6'5" Blue Eyes. That's the order, I think. And I'd heard that song a few times, and when I investigated the story behind it, I was quite fascinated because the artist, she was a TikToker, and she kind of just made this up and said, can someone make it into a song? She just said the words, and then she put on the TikTok thing, did I just write the song of the summer? And for someone who's into manifestation, such as myself, I was like, wow, that's a lot of self-belief, to plant that seed. And now she's had David Guetta remix it for her, and it really is, going viral. And what I love about this person is a bit of a sidetrack, but I love the fact that she's quite an attractive girl, but she's not really flaunting that. She's kind of, sometimes she goes on TV interviews and she's wearing a big jumper, or she looks very natural. And I think that's really cool to kind of be okay with your skin and know that you don't have to kind of dress up or be a certain way. So I think she has a lot of things that I admire, but that self-confidence of planting a seed. This is the song of the summer, but the story behind that song is that she was kind of she's not looking for a man in finance. She was kind of like making a joke of the people who have these lists when they are dating. And that's the connection to Calling in the One, because that's something that I learned from this book, Calling in the One, because many people I know who are on the dating scene, they do have a list, and sometimes it's too specific, and to the point where they are, eliminating lots of possibilities. And I think it's good to know what you want in life, but how realistic are these lists? That's the thing. I think also when people go on dates that end up being very uncomfortable, often they are blaming the date and not looking at their own responsibility and their own role in the matter. So I think it's good to take some responsibility in those scenarios. And in this book, something that I learned it's not so much about the list, it's about getting clear about how you want to feel, because different people can, do you want to feel valued? Do you want to feel excited? Do you want to feel held? Do you want to feel cared for? So, and it's about becoming those things so you attract it, and not just expecting someone else to kind of make you feel complete. That's a really big thing, even though I just think that's one of the most important lessons that we can learn, is to become complete in ourselves before calling in the one into our lives. So this book is a great way to actually prepare for love. And what's fascinating about it is the person who actually recommended this book to me 3 years ago, shortly after finishing the book, she called in the one. She actually met someone. And there are many stories on Amazon, if you look at the reviews of this book, many people it has actually worked for. They've found love very soon after. But that's not really, if that doesn't happen to you, it doesn't mean it hasn't worked. I think it's just about getting into a space where, you are more accepting of love and more, let's say, more willing and more open to the possibilities of it entering your life, and not expecting someone else to kind of, make your life better. It's about, being in charge of your life and then taking responsibility for the things that you can change yourself and becoming complete. Because it's so important to, I think self-love is the foundation of good relationships and love especially. So self-love is the place to start. And also gaining clarity on what you want, and knowing that relationships are not always the answer. You have to find your own answers first. So I recommend this book to anyone who is looking for love, maybe heartbroken, or has had a bad relationship, someone who's kind of like reestablishing themselves after a breakup or something like that. So I think this book is amazing. And also the author has a very interesting story. I saw one of her speeches on, I think it was on Mind Valley. You can find it on YouTube. And she talks about how she was 41. I mean, I think she's in her 60s now. So when she was about 41, she wanted to call in the one and get married and have a baby. And at that time, being 41 and single and child-free was older than it is now. But by the time she was 42, she was actually married and pregnant or something like that. Or she had a child very soon after. So obviously her methods worked for herself, and it became a best-selling book. But then 10 years later, I think the marriage was breaking up in an amicable way, from what I understand. And then she thought, I have a marketing problem. And then she created Conscious Uncoupling. And then after that, she's calling in the next one. So it's a really interesting journey of manifestation and relationships. So if you're in that stage where you want to have more love in your life, then I'd recommend this book, Calling in the One by Catherine Woodward Thomas. And before you buy it, just check out all of the reviews, and they are all pretty good. And that is the book I'm reading now. Now it's time to slow things down as we prepare for this episode's guided affirmations meditation. It's probably not a good idea to listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. My personal brand radiates authenticity. I attract opportunities that align with my values. My personal brand evolves with me. I am resilient and adaptable. I am confident in my unique talents. I attract aligned opportunities. I am a trusted authority. My personal brand radiates authenticity. I attract opportunities that align with my values. I build meaningful connections with my audience. I inspire others with my passion and expertise. I communicate my message clearly. My personal brand stands out. I am a trusted authority. My personal brand radiates authenticity. I attract opportunities that align with my values. I communicate my message clearly and effectively. I am committed to continuous growth and improvement. I grow and improve continuously. I build meaningful connections. I am a trusted authority. My personal brand radiates authenticity. I attract opportunities that align with my values. I embrace my individuality and leverage it in my branding. I create value for my audience and clients. I inspire with passion. I am proud of my impact. I am a trusted authority. My personal brand radiates authenticity. I attract opportunities that align with my values. I am resilient and adaptable in the face of challenges. My story and experiences enrich my brand. I leverage my individuality. I create value for my audience. I am a trusted authority. My personal brand radiates authenticity. I attract opportunities that align with my values. I am proud of the impact my brand has on others. My brand evolves as I grow and learn. I am confident in my worth. My personal brand reflects my values. I am a trusted authority. To find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/VenusO'Hara. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, have an orgasmic week, and make sure every day is a climax.